Please welcome to the stage Scott Schenker from Microsoft.
Good afternoon. Thank you for taking your naps and your lullabies with me after lunch. Always love this time period. Thank you so much. Bright and shiny objects we hear about all the time. Often they are considered part of technology and technology's advancement, but I wanted to share a little bit with you over a short 15 minutes on some context on how to think about these things as they come in, okay? What you're looking at here are actually examples of folks who used technology available at that time of their lives to capture a self-image and share it with their friends and family, called selfies. On the far left is Jan van Eyck. In the 1400s, he painted what's believed to be one of the first painting self-portraits. In the middle, Robert Cornelius, who took a photograph in 1840. That's the first photographic self-portrait from what folks can, from what historians tell us. Anybody recognize the one on the far left? Colin Powell. That's Colin Powell's now somewhat infamous. There was an article about this. Around 1950, he took a selfie in a mirror. There was an article about that not terribly long ago. So selfies as a use of technology to share with friends and family has been around for quite a long time. So have groupies. So have groupies, which are shots of family members coming together. That family portrait has been around forever. And then the newsies of the day. These are actually newsies from a very, I think, important time period. On the far left is a photograph of Archduke Franz Ferdinand. Does anybody know his role in history? World War I. He was assassinated on the streets of Sarajevo. 9 days from now will be the 100th anniversary of that assassination. We're not talking about that very much. I think it's a missed opportunity in history, but that was the beginning of World War I. So even 100 years ago, photographs in the moment, the newsie, if you will, was a bright and shiny object, was an important aspect of society. What is it about photography? What is it about imagery? Well, photography records the gamut of human feelings. We have, for all of life, tried to record what is it we're doing, why we're doing it, how to record our histories, how to freeze a moment in time, how to memorialize ourselves and capture that image. We've been doing this forever and ever and ever. And the technologies and the culture around it allow us to do that at varying degrees. And the truth is that with the selfies, probably the greatest change is not the technology, which has moved somewhat incrementally of taking a picture and capturing your image, but the technology of sharing it. The greatest aspect of a selfie versus the hundreds of thousands of images that have been taken during the history of mankind is we can share it much more instantly. And that's really what makes it bright and shiny more than anything else. So I use this as an example. I want to bring a little bit of context as somebody brings you a bright and shiny object, tells you that they have the greatest solution to your greatest problem, or if you're looking for the greatest solution to your greatest problem, here's some context on how I tend to look at innovation and change. First, there's incremental. On the far left is a plow. We've been plowing soil very much the same way for hundreds and hundreds of years. Slight changes, incremental change in a stick drawn by a horse to a machine that brings a series of sticks through the dirt, et cetera. It's essentially the same thing, incrementally improved over time. We also have adaptive methods of innovation. The microscope and the telescope use essentially similar technology. They take curved glass to refocus the image and allow you to see close or far. However, the microscope was developed and put into use 100 years before the telescope. Why such a difference in that adaptive nature of the technology? Because culturally, folks weren't ready to look beyond the universe until the late 1600s. There's additive technology. Anybody have a backup camera in their car? Yeah, pretty common nowadays. They're almost everywhere. Interestingly, there was a 60-year period between the time video cameras were created and 1990 when Toyota came out with the first mass-produced, mass-published, mass-released car that had a backup camera. And finally, there are innovations that are true quantum change. There are changes that absolutely disrupt much of everything. Think the printing press, think computing, think the internet and the digitization of everything. Not that long ago, your photographs weren't digital, your music wasn't digital, your communications weren't digital. The digitizing of everything is a quantum change in the way in which we interact with each other. So as we think about bright and shiny objects as they come in, and as we think about innovation in general, there's 4 types of innovation. So there's 4, we just talked about the 4 ways in which innovation takes place. There's 4 reasons that innovation typically takes place. I can fix that. There's a problem that needs to be solved. I can prevent that. This isn't going to be a problem on my watch. I have come up with an innovative way of preventing that problem from taking place. There are the continuous improvers. These are the folks that tend to hold hundreds of patents for the smallest of incremental improvements or even major improvements. Good enough is not good enough. I can make this better. And then finally, they're the creators of the new future. And you can see how these sort of line up with the adaptive, the additive, the incremental types of improvements that we tend to see. Somebody brings you the newest thing. As you find yourselves with the newest thing, as you are looking for the newest thing, keep these 2 things in context. Now finally, there's where do we innovate? When we typically innovate, we think a lot about innovation in technology, and that's certainly a place in which innovation takes hold and takes place, but those can sometimes be the shortest lived innovations. If you look at innovation that takes place socially, or that takes place economically or politically, and by politically I mean culturally, the way organizations operate, those types of innovations maybe have hold a little bit longer. An example of one of these, economic innovation, the airlines many years ago were losing tons of money. And it may be unfortunate for all of us who travel, but they innovated economically and started charging for better seats, for the ability to upgrade, for bag checks, for things of that sort. That economic innovation allowed them to make almost $24 billion in profit last year. It wasn't a technical innovation, it was an economic innovation. And I would encourage you to look at social and economic and political innovations as much as you look at technical ones, because those can be the smallest ones that take the deepest roots and align up the most to the human nature, if you will, to the culture of your audiences, of your communities, of yourselves. So what's hot right now? Well, Gartner puts out this hype cycle for emerging technologies. I find this interesting every year to see what's in an innovation trigger, what's sort of peaking in its expectations, what then has a trough of disillusionment off of that peak, and then what tends to hang on through the stage of enlightenment and finally actually making its way into production. And what's at the top of this right now? One of my favorite topics, gamification. We hear a lot about gamification. Here's my favorite innovator again. What does Colin Powell tell us about gamification? Well, gamification is actively placing elements of game into an activity or a situation to further the outcome you're looking for. The military has been doing this for years. Look at his chest, look at his epaulets. Those are badges that tell you about his accomplishments. They tell you about his participation in certain activities. They tell you what group he's a member of. Military is not the only place to have done that for hundreds of thousands of years, or for thousands of years. The Scouts do it. The Scouts are pretty clear about it. You want a badge? You accomplish something. That's gamification. Achieve something, we give you a badge. We give you recognition, reward, some way of showing how you compare to others. The Scouts have been doing it for an awfully long time as well. The movies love to gamify normal life. Hunger Games is nothing more than the struggles of life and the struggles of government and its people brought into an actual game environment. But there's some very good and very strong ways in which gamification is used as well. The X Prize and other prizes like this have been used for a long time to stimulate innovation in very particular areas, whether it's the longest flight, whether it's the longest distance driven by a non-gas car, things of that sort. Nokia at the moment is working on a X Prize on finding technology that can sense health. Is there a way to have a technology that can tell if somebody might be prone to a stroke in the next short period of time, or things of that sort? So they are gamifying. They are saying we have a prize, we have rules, we have a way of winning and recognizing those who achieve this particular goal that we're looking for. Bringing games into everyday life can be really tricky, and we've got to be very careful with it. There's a few things that can tend to make gamification really, really dangerous. I've actually had folks say to me, getting points to the attendees for the surveys they fill in is the most important thing. We're going to gamify so that people will give us feedback. Well, unfortunately, that may actually not be the objective the event has. So we have to worry about people who game the game. You have to make sure that there are established rules and some way of adjudicating those rules, because by human nature, we will look for loopholes. We will look for ways, if you make it a game where there is a prize, whether that prize is economic, whether that prize is social, like achievement or recognition, whether that prize is political, like you are the head of a group, people will game that game. So we always have to watch for loopholes that allow people to game the game and make sure we establish really strong rule sets. Second is the loser syndrome. For the most part, we can create games in which nobody loses. Many video games, while there is competition, you are also in many ways competing against yourself or against a particular progress or a particular set of accomplishments that doesn't mean somebody else has to lose in the process. But when you gamify an event, you gamify the number of people who are giving you feedback related to breakout sessions, you could potentially have a loser syndrome depending on how you build the rule set. So focusing on progress and accomplishment rather than on a winner or a group of winners. We have to be careful about eclipsing or having unclear objectives. Again, I had an agency several years ago say to me, "You don't get it. Events are not successful if they don't have a game component to them." And I said, "You don't get it. That's not the reason we put events on. We put them on to drive our business, and our business is not games." And finally, grading your own homework. This is one that I absolutely love. Games in which the success of the gamification is measured by the folks who brought you the gamification to begin with. There needs to be agreed to goals and measurements, not just in the mechanics of the game, but in the outcomes and the objectives of the game. So gamification is something very popular right now. It's a bright and shiny object that brings technology and social and economic and political elements together, but it's one that we need to be very conscious of as we're bringing it into play. I want to take a moment and show you another technology that is up and coming that I think is very exciting. It's on the Gartner hype, it happens to be, and that is this speech-to-speech translation. I don't know if any of you had a chance. The timing's very fortunate here, and this may seem like a commercial for Microsoft, and it is a little bit, but it's actually a really exciting technology. But we have just launched the newest, if not the most advanced, speech-to-speech translation tool. I've got a little video here showing you how Skype translation works and how it'll be coming out shortly. So let's go ahead and roll that video.
The problem of having a machine understand human speech has been around in research for a very long time. But now at Microsoft, we are on the verge of having a tool available to all that allows us to speak universally with anyone on the planet. For over a decade, we tried to develop the means for improving speech recognition using Gaussian mixture models. All of that changed when our researchers got together and decided to take a new look at the use of deep neural nets applied to speech recognition, now the new gold standard in speech. Research is a long game. By getting smarter every day and sticking with and understanding the value of basic research, we eventually get to a point where wonderful things can happen. Imagine being able to speak in German and have your message conveyed grammatically and semantically correct in English. That future is here. With a Skype translator, it all starts just as with any other Skype call. You just call someone. But now the difference is the person you're calling doesn't have to speak your language.
Die ich dir gestern geschickt habe.
But I wanted to talk to you about the email that I sent you yesterday.
Brauchst du noch irgendwelche Änderungen?
Do you need any changes?
There was one thing though. Could you change the green to a lighter shade?
Könnten Sie das Grün durch einen helleren Farbton ändern?
Ja, wir können das Grün viel heller machen.
Yes, we can make that green much brighter.
Ich sende dir heute Abend eine neue Datei.
I'm sending you a new file tonight.
That sounds great. I look forward to it.
Das klingt toll.
With a Skype translator, it's a full human-to-human interaction that crosses the language barrier. It's truly a magical experience.
So what I find so amazing about this technology is that it does hit on so many of the things we talk about with innovation. Think about not just the technology, but the impact that that will have on the way that people work together, on the ability for a company or an organization to sell or interact or support around the world. On your own ability as you travel to be able to translate as you're talking to somebody in almost instant time. Skype is available on every portable device, as well as laptops, as well as embedded in other places. So its impact is going to be really across all of the things that all of the context in which we look for innovation to take place. So in closing, I'll leave you just with a couple things here. How do we innovate? We innovate by making incremental, additive, adaptive, and quantum changes in the areas of social, technical, economic, and political spheres of our lives in order to create a new future, in order to continuously improve, in order to problem solve and to problem prevent. So when folks bring you bright and shiny new objects, I'd encourage you to take the moment to look at this context and say, is that a flash? Is the brightness as important as the thing that makes it bright? And how is that going to help me in what I'm doing? Appreciate your time today. Thank you.